Question is, can I finish this before the battery runs out? Challenge accepted. Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about all of the books that I read in July. I'm late again, but we were gone all of last week, like the first week of August pretty much. We were gone camping for the whole week with no service or Wi-Fi. Well, Wi-Fi that was so slow that nothing worked on it basically. So I couldn't even film it there. I thought about it, but there was no way I could upload it anyway. So here we are. It's Wednesday, August 14th. I hope I can have this up for sure by tonight or tomorrow morning. But yeah, we got back on Sunday. Then Monday and Tuesday were busy days of just, you know, a reset after a week-long vacation. Just getting things back to order. Anyway, moving on. I was checking the morning. Baby girl is stirring. She's taking short naps today. Man. Anyway, technically I read 6 books in July. But I'm going to say it was 7 because the last book that I read, I had just like 30-some pages, a little, maybe a little more, I don't know, to finish in that book, and I finished it on August 1st. But it was so small, I read the majority of it in July, so I'm just going to count it as read in July. 4 of them were historical fiction, 3 of them were part of a series, 2 classics I guess, and then 1 nonfiction book. I'm gonna go check on her real quick. I don't even know where I was, where I stopped. I'm just gonna get started. Okay, I'm gonna talk about the 3 books that were in the series first, and then go from there. It'll be easier. And those books are the ones in the Canadian West series. So I finished book number 3 first, When Breaks the Dawn. So a brief recap of the series is book number 1 is Elizabeth moves out west to be a teacher, and she meets Wynne Delaney, who is a part of the RMCP. Editing Carmen here to say that I knew when I said that it was wrong. It's not the RMCP, it's the RCMP. Royal Canadian Mounted Police, not the Royal Mounted Canadian Police. I knew it was wrong when I was saying it, but I was not switching it around in my brain, and then I continued throughout the rest of the video, or this segment, to say the RMCP. So that's my bad. My apologies, but there we go. And they fall in love, get married, obviously. And then this book number 2 is of Wynne and Elizabeth moving up north, where he is stationed for a term with a native tribe up there, and just all of the struggles of life in the north, because Elizabeth isn't used to that kind of lifestyle, obviously, and so yeah, just all of her struggles with that. Okay, then book number 3 is a continuation from book number 2 of them living up in the north in the town of, what's it called, Beaver River, and just going through, again, her daily life there, of learning how to live there, making friends with the women, starting a school for the children, learning the language of the people there. This whole series is really kind of just slow-paced, and they're all written from Elizabeth's point of view in first person. Yeah, and it's just her, it's almost like reading her journal, in a sense, of just her daily life, the struggle she faces with making friends with the native women there, learning their language, like I said, and yeah, making friends, and also trying to share the gospel with them, and yeah, just being there for the people when they face hard things, etc., etc. So it's very, like I said, like, it's not super plot driven, and it's not a very fast-paced story. There's also not, I mean, Wynne and Elizabeth are obviously married now, and so it's like their married life, which I actually appreciate, because so many Christian fiction books it's just about a love story, and it never goes into the marriage, or it rarely goes into the marriage and like what daily married life looks like. So, I don't know. I'm saying that because I feel like some people might find the next books in the series a little boring. Because the first one is really interesting with her meeting Wynn and their whole love story and everything. But then the next books just go into the daily life. But I don't know. I rated these all 5 stars again, except book number 6, which I read this month, so we'll talk about that in the next wrap up. But yeah, I still rated them 5 stars. It's only because I simply enjoyed them so much again, and the nostalgia attached to these books. But I can understand if people find these a little boring, but I do recommend them. Give them a shot. They're really interesting. There's that one. And then I obviously read book number 4. So this one then, the RMCP, at least in these books, I don't know the I'm pretty sure it's fairly accurate because Janette Oak is from Canada, so I think she knows what she's talking about. But the officers weren't always stationed long-term at certain places, like maybe 2 to 3 years at the most. And so at the end of this book, they find out that they got a new posting and have to go to another town and settlement. And this was right after Elizabeth had made really good friends and had established a community. She knew the language fairly well, and then they were uprooted and had to go to an even more remote village. And then this one is again written in the same style, first person. It's kind of just her daily life, and this one at this settlement she for sure really, really struggled with making friends because the group of people there in that town, I don't know that any of them had ever really seen a white person before, and so they were all just a little bit suspicious of her, and because of their religion, they also, they just kind of viewed her as a bad omen, maybe, I don't know. So she's navigating all of that, just trying to make friends with them, even speaking to them in their language. She could hardly get any responses from them, and the children would run away from her. And so yeah, this one was just a lot of her just being really lonely and just navigating again a new community and trying to establish friendships. And then a really terrible tragedy happens, and after that Wynn was gone when all of this happened, and Elizabeth had stepped up to help the people and had organized things just to help the entire situation. I don't want to give spoilers if anybody wants to read it. And after that, she was able to make friends, and people started trusting her again and all of that. But yeah, again, just more of the daily life. And again, at the end of this book, after the tragedy happened and Wynn comes back, some different circumstances took place, and so they actually had to leave that camp or leave that posting early, and they got moved to another place, a more modern town, things like that, which again, at that point then, Elizabeth was sad to be leaving that group of people right after she started establishing relationships with them. Anyway, there's all of that. And so then book number 4 is the end of the books, I feel like, of the original Canadian West series. Wynn and Elizabeth never did have any of their own children, biological children. It's never really said why. I think it is mentioned maybe in the second book or in the third book that she does go into Calgary and visits doctors and stuff, and they said everything's normal, so they don't understand why she can't have children. But yeah, she doesn't. It's not really a spoiler, I don't think. But in this book, at the end, they do start to take in some children. Like the foster care system, I don't think was really set up at this point, but they did take in children that were in need, basically. at the end of this book. But anyway, what I was saying is this is kind of like the end of the original Canadian West series that are told from Elizabeth's point of view and in first person, because I read the 5th book, Beyond the Gathering Storm. It's the only one that I don't have a physical copy of. This is then, like, you jump forward many, many years later to when their adopted son is in his 20s, and he's also a part of the RMCP now as well. And then it's also about their daughter, Christine, who they adopted as well. She wasn't mentioned in any of the other books, but it jumps forward pretty far, and then it's just told in the normal narrative type of story, second person, I guess. And it's kind of Henry's and Christine's stories of them navigating life. Christine moves to the city. She's used to living in the north, where it's more like the backcountry type of place, and she moves to the city and she's learning to navigate that and a job, and gets into a relationship that has red flags from the beginning. And the whole time you're just like, Christine, you should know better. And I think she knows better as well, but she was still choosing to ignore everything. Yeah, it's just all about her navigating that. And then with Henry, he had faced some really hard things as in his job. One thing in particular was having to go tell a woman and her tiny little baby that her husband was killed, and that just kind of like shook him. And so he's dealing with that, and like he's remembering this. It's not really part of it in the book, but he's remembering that this happened, and it's about 5 years later, I think, and he gets a new posting in a random town further south, and he meets this woman, and he had no idea she was living there. And yeah, just kind of their story of getting to know each other, and obviously there's a bit of a romance. But, you know, there's that. I also really enjoyed this one. It was really good. I liked having a different writing style and it not being in first person anymore. That was one thing that I wish about these books. Like, I liked Elizabeth's perspective, but at the same time, I would have loved to have been inside Wynn's brain and mind. And like, you just don't get a lot of Wynn in these books because it's written in Elizabeth's point of view, and Wynn is always off, busy, working, doing his job. And yeah, you just rarely get his perspective. It's only like through the perception of Elizabeth and what she thinks he might be thinking type of thing. If that makes sense? So I wish we would have a little bit more of that in those books, but it's fine. Really? You think so? I don't think you should be playing with a cord. Let's put that away. And there we go. Those are the books 4, 5, and 6 in the Canadian West series, and then I finished the 6th book this month, so you'll hear about that one later and my thoughts on it. It is my least favorite one of the series. I'll just give that heads up. Alright, moving on. So then the next book that I read was Secrets She Kept. There we go. Secrets She Kept by Cathy Gohlke. So this one would now be the 3rd book that I read by Cathy Gohlke, and this one was the first 5-star book that I read of hers. I love all of her other books, but this one was the one that just, like, the ending and everything just got me. Squeezed my heart real good. And yeah, so this one was the first 5-star. So I'm slowly making my way through through the back list, because I love her stories and I love her writing. I love her characters, I love her faith content. But anyway, what this book is about is Hannah Sterling. She, in the beginning opening pages, her mother had just passed away, and we see right away that she does not have a good relationship with her mom, and she never really did. And so that was a really hard thing that she faced with in her life. And I think she's in her 30s maybe, and single, at least late 20s, but I'm not really sure. I'm pretty sure it's 30s. But anyway, she is, because of all of this with her, losing her mom and not having a good relationship with her mom, she is kind of struggling in her job. She's a teacher, and so she's dealing with some anger issues. And because of that, the school let her go for a while and told her she needs to just take some months off, figure out what's going on with her life, and then maybe come back and they will hopefully give her her job back. And so then that forces her to have to just face some things within herself and her life, and just dealing with all of the legal stuff of selling her mom's home, going through all the belongings, dealing with the lawyers, everything. And through all of that, she discovers some letters that, like her mom never really talked about her past. She knew her mom was from, she said Austria. She knew that her mom had dealt with some things during World War II. So this one I think is set during, like, the present day is set during the 70s. Yeah, so in dealing with the lawyer and everything, she's given a key to a safety deposit box, and in that box she finds some letters that her mom left behind. Not necessarily written to her, but letters that were written to her mom back in the day. And so through that, Hannah finds out that she actually has a grandfather that is still living in Germany. And she's just like, why don't I just go to Germany and meet my grandfather, who I didn't know existed, maybe learn some things about my mom and why she was the way she was, what happened to her, etc., things like that. And so she goes over to Germany and obviously meets her grandfather. And through all of this, the chapters do kind of switch, like, back in time to her mom's point of view and things that she faced during World War II. Well, the sun just went behind the clouds and it got really dark. Sorry. But anyway, we're going to keep going. I got one bar left. I'm going to beat this. Anyway, the POV, I mean, like, switching back and forth in the timeline, like dual timeline type of thing, was not actually difficult to follow. A lot of it tied in to the things that Hannah was discovering about her mom in the present day. Anyway, she meets her grandfather and she starts asking him questions, but she's not really getting a lot of answers. And her grandfather had set up this whole thing with a driver to drive her around Berlin in Germany. And this is obviously when Germany was still, I'm pretty sure, was still split into East and West Germany with the wall and everything. But her driver is, like, giving her the classic tour of Germany, showing her everything of Berlin, I should say. And he is a couple years older than Hannah. We like the guy. He's great. And he's also a Christian. Hannah is not a Christian in the beginning of the book. And so you kind of get her faith journey through this whole story, which I love. Yeah, I love, what's his name? Carl. Classic German name is his name. But anyway, he's a great guy. Love him. So yeah, through all of this, Hannah's not really getting a lot of answers from her grandfather. And she doesn't really know who he was in Nazi Germany. And she kind of assumes through things that Carl is saying that most people don't really like her grandfather because of what he did. But she doesn't know the truth yet. And so she's kind of thinking that maybe they just misjudged her grandfather because the grandfather she sees in front of her is a kind, loving man. And she's hearing all of these things, that he was a high-ranking Nazi officer, and just like the things he did to people were awful, and she just can't fit the two and two together. So through all of this, she's learning things herself, but we're also getting we're also going back in time to actually see what her mom was dealing with and what her grandfather was actually doing. So we know the truth about everything that's happening, but she doesn't, and so we're just following her and discovering these things along the way. So it is really heartbreaking, the things that she has to face within her family history and the things that her grandfather did. But through it all, she also learned more about who her mom was and started to actually understand the walls that her mom built up, and like why she treated her the way she did, or more just like blocked her off, and like she never really felt loved from her mom. It was just really hard, obviously, because of the things that her mom, Lisa, faced. And so you find out that her mom was actually part of the resistance and working to protect the Jews and hide them, while her father was a high-ranking officer and like taking homes and personal items away from the Jews and sending them off. And like, yeah, he was not a great guy, it turns out. And yeah, so she's just having to wrestle with all of that. And again, she then learns a deeper understanding of who her mom was and also other secrets of her past. And so the secrets she kept is about the secrets that her mom kept from Hannah. I don't know. Everything about this book, I loved it. It's so hard because you don't really see a lot of books that are written from that perspective of people who had family who were part of the Nazis in Germany. And so like I said, this was still written in 1970. This was set in the 1970s. And so, 30 years after the war is over, Hannah is in Germany, and she's still thinking that people don't have these sentiments towards the Jews anymore. But clearly they still did. Just because Germany had lost the war, some of that sentimentality and like the ideologies that were just ingrained into people died hard. Like they still existed in a lot of people's minds, especially some of the older generation. And so she's like coming face to face with that and just just learning how to reconcile all of that in her family history. And like I said, you just don't really see that side of things and that perspective in historical fiction books. And so it was really interesting to get that perspective, and I think Cathy did an excellent job with it. The book, like the ending, is really sad. Is it really a spoiler to say this? Basically, there are just some relationships and some circumstances that are never reconciled, and that's like the actual case for a lot of people, for the victims of the Nazis. So many of them never found their families again, and like there was, some people never faced justice for the things that they did. And so like those aspects are kind of brought into the ending of this book, and then Hannah is having to learn how to forgive her grandfather, forgive her mom, all of the things. And I don't know, I think the ending was really good, even though it was hard, but it was very real and true to life, I would say. And I don't know, just so good, so good. I would highly recommend this if you love historical fiction. And like I said, there is a little bit of a romance in here. There's Lisa, like her mom and her romance and everything, and with Hannah's father and everything, like that's in there. But then also Hannah and Carl, such a good man, like I said. And their little story, there were so many times in there that I was just like, I can't, what? That's so sweet. Anyway, 5 stars, highly recommend, and my battery's dying, so I gotta switch that out. I did not make it. I talked about a good book too long, as I do. Alright, here we go. The final 2 books that I read, no, the final 3 books, sorry. So then, the next one that I finished, I was trying to get my books, just trying to check off some books off of my physical TBR, and was also trying to up the amount of books that I read in July. And so I picked up this book, Dear World, by Bana, Alabed. I think is how you would say her name. It's a Syrian girl's story of war and plea for peace. It's a very, I figured it would be a really quick read, and I think I pretty much read it in one sitting or two. This is just a little girl's, 7-year-old girl's perspective of the Syrian war that broke out a couple years ago. Yeah, and just her perspective of it. And she at one point like took to Twitter and started just posting things and of all of the things that she was facing and asking for peace for her country. And so yeah, it's written from a little girl's perspective, and then you do get little sections that were written by her mom. And so yeah, it was a really good, sweet, and heartbreaking story, obviously, because of the things she saw that no child should have to deal with and see. There are a lot of hard things in here, obviously, death, losing loved ones. So just know that going in if you do pick it up. But I do recommend it because I think it's good to read true stories like this and get people's perspectives and of those things. But anyway, there's that one. I think I rated 4 stars. Anyway, and then you would have seen in my attempted 24-hour readathon that I just filmed 2 weeks ago, that I had read Northanger, Abbey, the Chronicles of Avonlea, and the 5th book in the One Calls the Heart series, Beyond the Gathering Storm. So if you haven't watched that, go check it out if you're interested. But here is my final review of them. The first one that I finished was Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. This one is my new favorite Jane Austen. I loved this one. It's just so good. It's so much satire and just classic Jane Austen wit and banter, and I adored this book. I love Catherine, the heroine of the story, and also Henry. What a great guy. But this book, I didn't know this, but apparently this was Jane Austen's first novel that she wrote, but it wasn't published until after Pride and Prejudice and possibly some other books. I'm not really sure on that, so don't quote me on that. Yeah, this one was the first one that she had written, and I can't remember the details as to why it wasn't published right away, because it was finally published like many years later, 10 years later. I don't know the details. All that to say is, I don't know, this one is just so good, and it was written as a satire dealing with the Gothic novels that were very popular back in that day. I don't know, I just found it so funny how you're just randomly reading the story and Jane Austen goes off on a tangent and rants about why reading novels is a good thing, but then she's also kind of making fun of the idea of reading novels. It's a fun time. But the actual story is of young Catherine. She's invited by some friends to go to Bath, and she becomes friends with Isabella, who has a brother who is the absolute worst. I mentioned this in the vlog that I did, the 24-hour readathon, that Jane Austen does an excellent job of making you dislike the antagonist or the not good guy, you know? This one was just an all-around good time. I absolutely loved it. And I will say, if you want to just read the novel just for the fun of it, just for the story, without like getting into like the nerdy parts of it, of her, like the satire and the different elements that make up a novel, everything, then just read it and enjoy it for what it is. But if you like the nerdy part of it like I do, and just understanding certain things and why Jane Austen wrote this book and the way she wrote this book, I would recommend going to and listening to the Literary Life podcast. I think there's 3 or 4 episodes where they break down the book by chapters. I love the Literary Life podcast, and they helped me understand Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis, and they've also done tons of other classics and things like that. Haven't listened to all of the episodes, but I went and found this one for Northanger Abbey, and it just brought so many different parts of the book out that I didn't see when I read it. So it was very interesting, and I would highly recommend that. But anyway, moving on. I then read Chronicles of Avonlea, and this was for Chantel's Read Your Bookshelf Challenge, the July prompt, which was to read a collection of short stories. And this book, absolutely loved it. It was so good. As most of L.M.Montgomery's books are. I don't know, just her characters and the short little stories in this, especially in this collection. There are so many fun ones. I pretty much enjoyed all of them. I don't really think there's one story that I was just like, that was kind of lame. But I don't know, just the classic humor, the classic escapades and scraps that people get into. I don't know, it's just a good time. And Anne shows up a few times, or she's at least mentioned, because these are just stories about people who live in the surrounding area of Avonlea. And yeah, anyway, highly recommend. I rated it 5 stars. It was so much fun. And I do want to get a copy to add to my L.M.Montgomery collection because it was just so good. But anyway, those were the 7 books that I read. 5 books, 5 physical books, and then 2 books on my Kindle. Let me know if you're interested in any of these books, or if you have read them, let me know your thoughts on any of those. Yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.